Episode 37. 37 degrees Celsius is the normal human body temperature. Harry Kane from England used to wear the number 37 for Tottenham up until 2014, and 1937 was called the recession within the Depression, the second greatest downturn in the 20th century, thought to be due to a tightening of monetary policy, and in fact, in the 12 months after March 1937, the stock market fell 58%. Beyond MD, episode 37, here we go! Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Truth is, I never really used to be into history as a student, but that's changed now. I'm developing more of an interest. And I think part of it's because we don't really have a playbook for what's going on today. When you have high inflation, historically tight monetary policy, and a very volatile market, I think it can sometimes be interesting and it can be helpful to go back into our past to try and navigate the day-to-day with a bit more level-headedness. It certainly helps me to sleep a bit more at night. So for those out there who are like me, developing more interest in history, I have attached a really interesting paper summarizing what happened in 1937 and 1938. But in sum, there was a drastic shift in monetary policy at that time. So a recovery from the Great Depression was starting in 1934, 35, and 36, when the money supply was rising from 10 to 20% per year, and then the government pivoted. They decided they needed to cut deficits, raise taxes, and reduce the money supply. And part of that happened by sterilizing gold. And I learned that what that means is a lot of the gold coming into the US in 1937, it was in fact removed from the money supply. And so that shock was thought to result in a major downturn. And as I mentioned before, stocks from 1937 March, 12 months onward, they absolutely vomited. So they fell by 58%. Really fascinating. Take a look at the paper in the show notes. So my guest today is Dr. Ketan Kulkarni. He's a physician. He's a pediatrician who specializes in hematology and oncology. He's a researcher, a passionate entrepreneur, and an ardent advocate for financial literacy. Now, Ketan is a very impressive guy. He's published well over 100 papers, and I guarantee you that based on that number, you probably will not be interested to hear how many papers I have published. But his vision is to live a balanced and successful lifestyle, and one that focuses on career longevity and satisfaction. And his vision is one that stems from his own journey. He experienced burnout, he overcame burnout, and we do talk about this in the interview. Ketan is also a certified life coach, and he focuses on success, entrepreneurship, leadership, and finance. He also co-founded the Thrive RX course, which is a course that helps physicians to thrive in all aspects of their life. And he is the co-author, along with Dr. Francis Yu, of a wonderful book called The Legendary Quest. This is a book I had a chance to read on a flight to Fino in May of this year, and it was phenomenal. Usually on our flights, I'm trying to prevent my kids from watching an iPad the entire way. This time, I was shoving the iPad in their face because I couldn't put the book down. And the reason for this is that the book outlines so many mental traps that we as physicians and professionals tend to fall into. And I realized I had fallen into so many of these traps myself, and this was in fact preventing me from living to my full potential. So the book is a beautiful discussion about living life with full intent and living life in accordance with your core values. I don't get paid to support this book, but I believe it's a phenomenal read, and I believe that any physicians, any professionals out there will thoroughly enjoy it. So if you're interested, the link is in the show notes. And with that, here's my interview with Dr. Ketan Kulkarni. Hey, Ketan, welcome to Beyond MD. Honestly, I'm so excited to have you here today because we had a chance to connect about 3-4 months ago, and I truly enjoyed my conversation with you. It was a lot of fun. So I knew the next time we were going to have a lot of fun talking. So welcome. And Ketan, where does the pod find you tonight?
Yeah, I'm located in Halifax in the Maritimes. So, it's really my pleasure. It's been fantastic following your work, following your interviews that you do for other people, the work you've been doing, and the pleasure is entirely mine.
Oh, thanks, Ketan, for that. But you are my first guest from the Maritimes, which makes this one extra special. So, Ketan, you're up to so many things. I'm very fascinated by the path that you've taken. Maybe just take a minute or so to give the listeners a quick background on yourself so they can understand what makes you tick, a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Yeah, so I think I started like most others, across Canada or North America or beyond, like after investing about 14 years into medical training and subspecialty training, I was, in hindsight, I was wearing this hat of a clinician researcher, and you're gung-ho and you want to achieve so many things, and you have this scope of vision which you think is very broad. And then I established my research program and got my first promotion in 5 years, and then suddenly there was a family that was expanding, there was friend circle and support, and we had moved to Maritimes, which is absolutely fantastic province and fantastic place to live, but yet something was missing, and up until I went through burnout experience in 2017-18, it seemed like the right thing to do, and yet something was missing. So what happened really was a change in my focus, a change in my lens, for lack of a better word, that I learned that maybe I'm looking for a broader identity. And I went through this huge identity shift, which in turn helped me rekindle all my passions and interests, and really explore who I truly am. I'm not saying I'm done with it, but it's truly sort of becoming real, becoming more deep, and becoming more engaged. And if anything, it helped me practice medicine better, be more engaged with patient care, be more focused on outcome, grow the research more, but also embark on all these other paths and meet fantastic people like you and really develop the connections. And it's really, I think, all about meaning and contribution in the end, and what are we going to leave in terms of a lasting impact on the planet. And so until we recognize that, and until we sort of live by those principles, it's still a learning curve.
I love the message there, Ketan, because I can tell you, and I recently told somebody something similar on another interview. I told them that over time, I've developed many interests, and I feel like early on in my career, at least it started when I was trying to get into medical school. It continued every leg of the way, medicine residency, but I found like I had true tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And I found that because of that, I wasn't learning about other things.
Yeah.
And now I'm really trying to catch up. But I think it's my outside interests that, in fact, keeps medicine more interesting for me, because I'll spend time interviewing somebody just like yourself on a podcast. I'll spend time reading a few articles on finance, and then I'll spend time with my kids, and then I'll come back to medicine and I'll say, today I really want to do this. And it keeps things really fresh for me, and it allows me to focus and do things with intent. So I can really understand where you're coming from. But Ketan, just so people know, in terms of your medical practice, can you tell us a bit about that? Like, what area of medicine were you mostly academic? Because I know you've published a lot of research as well. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, my day practice is in pediatric hematology oncology.
Yep.
So it's a fascinating field where research is always cutting edge. It's a beautiful balance between clinical practice, patient impact, patient engagement, and clinical translational research. So my focus of research is a lot on clinical outcomes and using multi-omic approach to really advanced care and treatment toxicity, and looking at thrombosis in high-risk populations. And that sort of itself is a little bit diverse, but it comes together pretty beautifully, because that's sort of the track I've taken. And it does range quite a bit from basic science. So I've got students doing mouse model to all the way to direct clinical multi-center research. So it somehow works. I think the Brownian motion kind of makes sense to me. It's like a wave that kind of keeps going. Not to say that it's overwhelming, but it's actually enjoyable, because I have over the years learned to hinge it to making sure that that's truly what I'm interested in, and that it truly impacts patient outcomes. And I think if we keep that sight, then we would automatically align and let go of opportunities that don't align. That also sort of gives the opportunity to be engaged in teaching, and have students that are, whether they're master students or PhD students or postdocs and stuff like that, to routine clinical teaching, that's bedside teaching or undergrad teaching, but also administrative and leadership opportunities, right? I mean, over the years, through multiple national, international conferences, you get the opportunity to be on those committees, understand the pros and cons of pure academia. And over 9 years I've been in practice, as a consultant, I definitely realized that, academia is fantastic, and it's certainly something that's extremely gratifying, but you definitely need to watch out the tunnel vision. There's so much world, like you said, outside of that. And, sometimes I've had the most fascinating interactions with accountants and lawyers and, finance advisors and just the random good old retired person or, like my friends range from like probably teenage to 85, like you got the full
Yeah,
spectrum.
yeah, yeah.
It's fantastic. I think if we look at it as I'm going to learn more, I'm going to kind of become better every day, little by little. I think it becomes way less a struggle and much more of an enjoyment. I'm not saying that there's no struggles. I mean, I barely got any sleep last 24 hours. The only way I could do the interview with that much energy is, you know, be really aligned with the mission and vision.
In terms of academia, you mentioned that, and you're quite established in the medical research world, right? Because you've put out quite a few papers. Is it in the triple digits? Am I
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, we're pushing 100 and quarter now,
Wow, wow.
it's no longer about longer CV, right? I mean, once you push 100-page CV, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. So it's really about, to me, it's about meaningful, impactful research. How can I help students get better at research? How can I collaborate more with meaningful interactions? How can we leave a lasting legacy? How can we solve clinical problems that we have? How can we use novel creativity and bring in new excellence in the field? So I've learned over the years to look at it from that perspective. And then certainly you see so much struggle people have, and they're trying to get just more papers for a longer CV, and there's all that, all those challenges that come. Funding is so difficult to get now. It's so competitive. Yeah, but if you look at the broad side of things and keep a broad open perspective, I think it'll be more enjoyable.
Absolutely. Now, you're fairly established in your career. You've put in a lot of clinical time, probably a lot of call shifts, many papers, and you mentioned burnout. Can you talk to us a bit about what led you to become burned out? Was there a single moment when you knew this is now happening to me, or were there a multitude of events that happened at one after another to actually push you to burnout? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that's really a great question, and I like how you put it. I mean, there wasn't really, I guess it was both. There were some singular moments and a constellation of symptoms. I mean, and I didn't recognize that in the moment, right? I mean, I had a good night's sleep for 9, 10 hours, and I would wake up feeling, my gosh, something's wrong with me. I don't feel the energy that I have. Like I could work very long hours with focus, and at the time where maybe the bottom point was, that wasn't the case. There was more irritability and less engagement and more depersonalization, maybe a little bit of loss of empathy, like really questioning why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing. And what led to it was possibly, I mean, certainly medicine has very long training years, which are gruesome, right? I mean, people outside of medicine don't believe it, that most physicians, residents, trainees put in 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. And over those long 14 years, in hindsight, I realized that I lost a lot of my interest. Like you see all the paintings at the back, and so
Yeah.
I lost my passion for art, and I used to perform music, and that went away
Huh.
somewhere. The entrepreneurial spirit went away. My mathematics and physics interest kind of went far in the distance, and there was just this acquired, I'm going to call it acquired syndrome. We talk about a lot about that in the book. It's becoming too entitled with the title of being a subspecialist clinician researcher with national international impact. That's all great. Do it, but let's not just make that our identity. We are all human, and we want to live the best human experience and
Mhm.
contribute meaningful things to the world. But if we too identify too much with just our titles, with just our jobs, and just a longer CV, I think inevitably that's going to happen. Like, I mean, that's the other way of putting that is midlife crisis, that people kind of
Mhm.
follow something and then they suddenly feel that it's not worth it because it was probably the wrong goal to pursue in the first place. I mean, it also shows that a lot of us are at the risk of having very misaligned life and lifestyle. Like we often compromise many other things for the pursuit of something, usually achievement of some sort, that the next promotion, the next Lancet paper, or the next whatever, next paycheck, or
Yeah.
whatever else it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are prone to chasing titles, and we are going to talk about that shortly. But I want to ask you, Ketan, how did you then overcome burnout once you realized something was wrong, something had to change? How did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think the people to thank are my close circle or inner circle, my spouse and close friends, who sort of said, something must be not quite right. And then, reaching out to coaches and mentors and kind of looking and reading at other people's experiences. And I was always a student of life, and I think I always will be. So I was always interested in inner growth. And somehow at that time point, I had some opportunities to embark on formal leadership training. So then I did that, and I continued like longitudinal leadership training for 3 or 4 years, and then I went ahead and did executive coaching, executive leadership certification. Then I did coaching certification, and then I was exposed to coaching mentors who were coaches, like business coaches or life coaches or professional coaches, and that opened a whole spectrum of things. Then and then COVID hit, and a lot of people suddenly had extra time somehow, and they were all on social media, and I started making these very meaningful connections, and suddenly it was like, okay, I found my tribe. These are people who do a ton of different things, and they do it all well. Like it's not like they're just doing medicine well. They're doing medicine
Right.
well, they're fit,
Right.
they're following their passions, they are discovering new things, they are patenting things. And it's not like we are telescoped into, or even we are siloed into boxes. They were doing so many things. And uh, a big difference I saw, that these people had growth mindset. I now know so many people in 7 or even 8-digit or 9-digit net worths. They're growth mindset oriented, right? They're showing you their $10 million portfolio, saying, look, this is how I invested. And sometimes it's unreal, like, till you actually do the math, it's like, okay, yeah, that's real portfolio. It's not like a fake portfolio. And, in contrast, often in medical circles, people shy away from discussing finances. And, we don't talk about money
Yeah.
and returns. And it's all about the service, which is important. We have to serve our patients. That's why we came in. But that's not the only important thing. We have to recognize that if we are not well and well aligned, we're unlikely to do that job well. I'm sorry, I'm using well too many times, but
No,
uh,
no, that's
I just
fine.
want to
But
highlight the point.
yeah, yeah. I hear your point, and your point is really well taken, because I truly believe that it's a multi-pronged approach. We have to look after ourselves. We have to look after ourselves mentally, physically. We have to have good relationships with our work colleagues, our loved ones,
Yeah,
have good spiritual health, and then also have good financial health as well, right?
yeah,
So without, if any of those pillars is missing, I believe that something isn't going to be right in our lives. But you mentioned coaching, Ketan. I'm glad you mentioned coaching, because to me it's really interesting. Sometimes I find in medicine, I don't want to use the word stigma, but I think
yeah,
people can sometimes shy away from this. But then when you look at other areas of life, and I always like the story about Cristiano Ronaldo when he entered the professional soccer scene. I think it was one of his first few years. His teammates showed up to his home, and then there was his coach, his trainer, and his chef, and his teammates were looking at him like, what the heck is going on here?" And he said, "Hey, listen, I want to get better. Not only do I want to get better, I want to become the best soccer player in the world. This is what
yeah,
it takes." And
yeah,
so if people like him
yeah,
are striving for more at every aspect of their
yeah,
life, then it's okay for us to get coaching and become the best person that we can be. That's what I believe in. So I think I'm glad you mentioned coaching, and it sounds like it's been a good experience for you. And then Ketan, it sounds like you went on to launch a few things. So you have the savvyphysician.ca. Can you tell us about this? Can you tell us about your website and what the main mission is behind this?
yeah. I'm going to tie in your previous point there. What happened is that as a student of life, as somebody who wanted to consistently get better, I've been reading so many different fields and so many different platforms. But what happened is that come 2019, come 2020, I was still not able to find a unified theory, not of the universe, but of life, that would be easily applicable
Yeah.
to each of our lives in very understandable, easy format that I could apply. Like, how do I put together positive psychology and quantum physics and ancient literature and Sanskrit textbooks, and even the messages from doctrine religions, and modern positive intelligence, and everything in a very simple language and format. And thus the book sort of was born, in our heads, and it took 2 years worth of research to put it together, to come up with our first edition of Legendary Quest. It's in no way complete, but I think we wanted to say that this is what we have, and that was sort of the step one to sort of put it all together. Sorry, what was your second question? I forgot that now.
We can talk about the legendary quest now.
Yeah.
I also wanted to know about the savvyphysician.ca.
Yeah, so the Savvy Physician, COVID happened, and I think it was January 2020 to March 2020 when COVID really started coming along, and it hit Canada there, and then shutdown happened, and suddenly you're sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, there's so much of this time available, and what are we going to do? And this is uncertain future. And it clicked to my head that, what, we need to be savvy doctors, we need to be savvy physicians. And I said, yes, this is exactly what makes sense to me. I would like to reach out to people and, connect with the tribe and make meaningful connections with other people who think similarly. So the
Mhm.
mission of the savvy physician is to really reach out and network and connect with all growth minded, growth oriented physician, and really all professionals, so that we can all live to the best of our existence, and live our dreams and visions. It's a broad overarching goal, but then it was sort of divided into, how can I kind of match and what is my vision. So I thought that the most relevant issues for physicians was professional fulfillment, authentic success, excellent financial management, good relationships, mental, spiritual, physical health, all of those aspects, and you know meaningful impact and contribution. Isn't that what most physicians are looking for? But yet we don't talk about it. We kind of bury ourselves into long CVs and accomplishments and achievements. So that's how the Savvy Physician group on Facebook and the website was born. I said, well, like, let me just put it out there, and then it was wonderful, and it has been wonderful since then, right? I mean, I'm sure I made over 1,000 meaningful interactions with physician entrepreneurs, physician lawyers, physician whatever you want to say, physician media
Yeah.
personalities, physician actors,
Yeah.
physician artists, physician and something else. But above everything, I think these were accomplished humans who were physician and plus 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 plus. They were not siloed into one identity, and I think it's that broad identity that made them excellent physicians. They're still very practicing physicians, but clearly they have broken the mold, and they've sort of changed the landscape. And I think some of our American colleagues are saying that it's physicians really reclaiming the joy of medicine, right? I mean, we're really wanting to do medicine for the joy of it, not just for the paycheck and to buy the bigger house or whatever else it is,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which can be all very important. But I think, are we doing it for the joy, or are we just kind of pursuing goals that are going to be like a mirage,
Yeah,
like it's just going
absolutely.
to keep going forward?
This is a great segue into one of my other questions, and then we'll get back to your book. But you mentioned practicing medicine for earning the paycheck, because Ketan, what I find is a cycle that so many people fall into, and trust me, I fell into this as well. But it's you wake up, you go to work, you earn the paycheck, you pay off your cost of living, you go to sleep, you wake up, and you repeat the whole cycle again.
Yeah.
And I've talked to many physicians across the country about this, and it's just like, why do we fall into this cycle? There has to be more to life than this cycle. I've brainstormed about it. Maybe it's our lengthy training. Maybe
Yeah.
it's the fact that we are altruistic and that we are there to provide a service.
Yeah.
But maybe you can help me sort this out a little bit more. But why do we fall into this cycle?
I mean, that's a heck of a question, and that's a great question. I think I think there's so many parameters. I think the first answer I have is that we are constantly told we are not enough. I'm going to be enough when I drive my Porsche. I'm going to be enough when I drive my BMW or whichever Lamborghini, whatever else it is. I'm going to be enough when I have my riverside home or lakefront home or whatever. I'm going to be enough when I look so and
Mhm.
so, when I have so and so, when I be so and so. So we are given all these external parameters of success. I mean, we have all these external measures of success simply because that's how the society works, and they're very easy to measure, right? A net worth of $5 million is indisputable. Okay, you got $5 million, but there's a misalignment there. We don't have any easy internal yardsticks of success. We don't ask, okay, I feel X happy today, or I feel Y fulfilled today, or I feel
Mhm.
Z um, satisfied today. There's no alignment there. I think that's one aspect of it. And B, in such a capitalistic and individualistic economy, I mean, all of us invest in stock market and we expect the 9-10% return. But if you think a little bit more deeply, I mean, how does that come? That means that people have to buy and spend money, and businesses have to grow. So
Mhm.
then there's that culture of not enough perpetuates in giving those messages and that marketing that, we constantly have to have the latest gadget, and, we constantly have to have furniture that changes every 2 years, and, whatever, 150 shirts in the closet, or jumbo jet, or boat, or plane, whatever it is that you can fill the blank. And the third aspect of this, I find, is purely our ability, or not, the lack of ability to understand what money truly means to us, right? I mean, in our book and work, we are trying to call that financial blueprint, right? I mean, do we really understand what money means to us? What's our true relationship with money? Like, do you believe money is evil? It's good or bad? Money is money, but we know that most of the decisions we make financially are emotional, and then we rationalize them. So let's say your lifestyle costs $100,000. Well, is that your ideal lifestyle? Only you can decide that, right? I mean, somebody's ideal might be 100,000, somebody's might be $1,000,000, and both are not wrong. But the question is, are they truly aligned with that? And why do they want that kind of expensive lifestyle, or less expensive lifestyle? So I think it's really having a healthy relationship with money that makes, us satisfied. That's going to be at the bottom line, right? I mean, if you are feeling financially successful and very well aligned, and internally satisfied, and have those external accolades and achievements, you're not going to care if Jeff Bezos is worth 300 billion or whatever X billion it is, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
saw there was a group on Facebook. It's called Trillionaires Club. There's people who want to become trillionaires. It's amazing. So the even $1 billion is nothing now. So it just shows us that the social ceiling is so high, right? I mean, there's always going to be somebody who has more than you have in some aspect. I mean, it's impossible to you know beat everybody under the sun. It's very unlikely. Yet we all, and I have myself been on the wrong edge of this decision, that we all fall into this trap of social comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
wealthy radiologist, the ultra wealthy anesthesiologist, but we fail to sort of invest time into understand what we truly want. And then there's a big disconnect, right? And then it's easy to sort of get lost in that comfort zone, right? It's easy to do your job and live paycheck to paycheck and just complain about the system.
But let me ask you then, how do you view money? Like, how do you use money as a tool to better your life?
Yeah, so I think, and I had to do a lot of work in this area, right? I mean, I had to do a lot of reading to really understand what money meant to me, and then amend my relationship with it to really understand what I want it to mean to me. So like a lot of other people, I believed, some of the rich get there by doing crooked things, and this and that and everything else. Often we think, well, money is bad, rich people are corrupt and power corrupts. And I had to really work through where those beliefs might have come from. And now I think I'm definitely on much more on track on as to what I want to believe about money. So I think money is a wonderful tool that is a means goal. So I call money a means goal now. So it's a means to your end goals. And I think the end goals are really important. So the end goals are your health, your family, your relationships, your profession, your contribution, your legacy, your significance, so many different areas of life. But money is the tool via which you can get to all of those goals. But if we flip that, if we compromise all those goals to get to a certain money end goal, I think we are up for trouble, is my opinion. And that's why we have so many unhappy billionaires, right? I mean, maybe they have flipped those goals. And that it's only up to us to really investigate, what that relationship with money is, and how much money do you need to achieve your end goals. So like, if that number is, I'm just going to try to make it simple. Like, if that number is, 150,000 annually, well, that's your number. And if that number is $1,000,000 annually, you're going to have to figure out a way to make $1,000,000 every year, but without burning out, right? Otherwise, you're going to just go in circles.
So, Ketan, let's go on to your book now, the Legendary Quest, which you wrote with Dr. Francis Yu. And I had a chance to read the book in May. We were flying to the West Coast. We spent a week in Vancouver and Tofino, which was just lovely. And then on the plane, I picked up your book and I said, I have to read this thing. And, I gave my son, one of my sons, his iPad. He watched his iPad for like 4 hours. I just read your book for 4 hours. I couldn't put it down, honestly. It was really, really, yeah, it was really well done. And it was very captivating. Like, for me, it was a page turner because I think it pointed out a lot of the mental blocks that I had suffered with early
Yeah.
on in my life. And so I just want to ask you, the legendary quest that you and Francis wrote, what motivated you to write this book?
Part of it was personal experience with burnout and challenges, and like you said, the mental blocks, the many multitudes of failures in various aspects of life, and yet the lack of ability to find like a comprehensive, holistic, easily accessible, evidence-based, actionable format that we couldn't find. The two of us met in 2019 and realized that we are both on this quest of excellence. So then we spent the next 2 years researching and aligning all our experience and the hundreds and hundreds of books we had tried to read in our pursuit of that inner meaning and excellence. And thus the book was born, right? I mean, it was a little bit of organic growth. I mean, we always knew we wanted to somehow, put the problem together and sort of explain why majority of the people, most of the times, experience some form of distress at all times. Like very rarely do you hear people say, yeah, I'm great, it was a fantastic day. We say, well, but that didn't happen well and this happened didn't happen. So we wanted to get to the crux of the problem, and that's part one of the book, right? I mean, we describe
Yeah.
the limited self model and lack of alignment with authentic goals and being too engrossed in your titles and success that becomes no success and all of that. And then we flip that, and then the book in part two centers on simply awareness as a principle. I mean, awareness has been at the forefront. Awareness, consciousness, conscious awareness, no matter what you call it, it's always been for centuries in pretty much most of the cultures that have been unbroken over centuries at the forefront of existence. That has been sort of often sort of the spiritual goal, and maybe the mainstream has forgotten about that, but it's always been at the center. And it simply means that you're living by design. You're keeping your conscious awareness at the forefront and not
Hmm.
letting your conscious awareness succumb to the mental chatter or the thoughts and the emotions. So we try to break down the awareness model into those different components so that people could work on those and recognize whenever you face a challenge, okay, what's wrong. I mean, recognize those mental traps, recognize those if then hypotheses and hedonic adaptation and so on and so forth. There are common mental traps. But then the part two of the book sort of ends where we thought it should end, that we will always face problems. There's always be a new issue, there'll always be a new storm, there's always be a new wave you have to surf. So how do we do that? And then
Yeah.
we researched into the value of gratitude and forgiveness, and all of those. They're not just buzzwords. I think they're very powerful tools. And even now I forget that, okay, we forget our gratitude exercises, and we forget what we already have, and there's a lot of science behind that. So that's where
There is. Yeah.
uh, the inner excellence portion ends. And then one of my particular areas of interest is the outer excellence portion, as we called it, and that
Hmm.
included success and understanding the true meaning of success, what the science behind lasting success is, and what the most well-known models of success talk about. And then of course leadership as it applies to personal growth and finances, because I mean, there's, like, I think we did mention this in our book, that we want to propose money as a means goal towards your end goals. And then how do you sort of really explore your personal relationship with money and what it means to you, and how you can really sort of mend that. If it's most of us, if I may say that, could use a better relationship with money. We always have some blind spots that need to be sort of improved. And when we, and then we leave the three parts to go into the final summary, which we call it, being the CEO of your life. So, we present this, I'm sure you read that, the happiness
Yeah. Yeah.
hypothesis, based on evidence, that what does it really mean? Like what would it take for us to feel the joy and feel the inner excellence? And, some people feel that it's a little bit Eastern philosophy, but I think that's not really true. I mean, it's a universal philosophy, I think, which was recognized in the East possibly centuries before it was recognized in other cultures. We just
Hmm.
don't know for sure, but I think it's a philosophy for everybody, that we thought was backed by evidence, uh, we thought was actionable, we thought was meaningful, and we also thought was reproducible. That everybody could kind of apply those principles and go from there. And then that is spiraling into sort of our next book and other
Oh, so
projects.
is this like a sequel, or is this a totally different book that you're going to come out with?
Um, yeah, I could tell you a little bit about it. It's going to be more of a parable. So we're going to use the
Uh
principles of the legendary because some people said, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot of theory. Come on, you can tell me a story and explain all these principles." I said, "Okay, we'll tell you a story." So it's a story of an eagle that
huh.
goes through this journey of transformation and the challenges, and it pretty
Oh, very
much
cool.
takes all the principles from the
Yeah.
legendary quest and puts it in a story.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I want to go to some of the key points from Legendary Quest without spilling all the beans, because I want people to read the book, because it's always better if you read the book yourself. But anyways, I think Ketan, you talk in the book a lot about figuring out first of all what your core values are in life, and then making sure
Yeah.
that you live life in accordance with those core values. So I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you, what are your core values? How do you like to live life? And then what kind of checkpoints do you have in place to make sure that you don't deviate too far from that path? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I wish I had done the core value exercises or work in my teenage and 20s. Like
Yeah.
I think I would have kind of resolved a lot of my struggles. So,
Yeah.
I actually did the work probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was, sort of in the intermental
Yeah.
turmoil and figuring myself out. So my core values are excellence, creativity, meaning, abundance, and joy. And it just simply anytime I look at, like, I'm fascinated by anything that's excellent. It could be the Starry Night by Van Gogh to the nicely made shoe. Like, I find the excellence in that, and I'm always gravitated to it. I'm always gravitated by a joyous situation. If people are laughing, I'm always going to just smile even if I don't know what's going. I always find myself trying to create something, whether it's like a piece of art or trying to do a new
Mhm.
research work. I mean, I recognized after that, that the reason I was doing research is because of my core value of creativity and excellence. That's constantly what I'm looking for, and then meaning automatically ties into that. And that's probably what has been the underpinning of uh, I wouldn't say necessarily prolific, but very consistent and very productive research, which has fortunately impacted patients directly. And that was the underpinning. When I recognized that, I felt much less stressed about it. I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's why I'm doing the
Yeah.
research. So, and that's why I embarked on the book. I said, okay, well, let's create something that can be easily accessible to people and, very economical, and people can just have it as a coffee table book, just read a portion of it that you're struggling with, just kind of reread it and just have it there, so that you have the principles in a simple format. So, I try to live by those core values. Do I forget? Absolutely. We are all human, and I keep forgetting, and I get into the rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, this is a problem, or something doesn't work out, a deal is not working out. We automatically fall to the mental traps. But I
Yeah.
think trying to consciously be aware of those values and centering again, and sort of remembering, that this is my fabric, and also remembering my blind spots helps me align again. Like a couple of days ago was a very tough day, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. And then I kind of remembered, it took me a little time to center again
Yeah.
and say, no, this is fine. We can live through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, do you take time to write this stuff down? Do you journal at all, or do you just kind of put in a few mental checkpoints to remind yourself of why you're doing something?
Yeah, I tried to journal, but that doesn't somehow work for me. Like I
Yeah, fair
like
enough.
the verbal or mental checkpoints. I'd like to talk it
Yeah.
out, or just with my inner circle, like I said, my core circle. I like to just talk it out. Hey, yeah, it was a bad day. This is what happened, or at least I perceived it as a bad day.
Yeah.
No worries. They'd say, yeah, no worries. Don't remember. That's our goal. You've got to do this. And then you kind of come back to the center again.
You mentioned a few really important words to me. You mentioned gratitude, you mentioned growth mindset as well. And I wanted to briefly touch on those before the final stretch of the interview. But gratitude and growth mindset, I'm just wondering, how have these concepts, help you to thrive in your personal and financial life? Like, one thing I can mention is that gratitude, there's certainly science behind it. There's a lot of evidence. So if people want to dig into it and see the mental and health benefits of gratitude, but also for me, just financially, like I tell the story that when I did my fellowship, I went to San Diego, and that entire year I earned $10,000. And
Yeah.
I had my wife, I had my son. We went down there when he was just 10 months old. And
Wow.
so we had to figure out ways to enjoy life that were meaningful and memorable, but also not spend a lot, right? But then I think after that year, it just became a part of us that, okay, we don't need to go out for the fancy dinner to create a wonderful memory. We can go to the local taco stand. And so for me, just being grateful for what I have. And in that year, the most precious things in my life were my wife and my son. As long as the three of us were together, I felt like nothing could stop us. And so for me, that mindset has actually helped me to believe that I don't need to buy things. I don't need to pursue material things to be happy. But I want to know for you, gratitude and growth mindset. How has this helped you to thrive personally and financially?
Yeah, I think I'm going to start with being, I start by being a little more vulnerable, So a couple of my blind spots have been, this drive for hyperachievement, right? I mean, okay, well, I published this paper, not enough. I'm going to do
Hmm.
this, I'm going to do that. Let's also do that. And then, sometimes that can drive people nuts and even oneself nuts, right? I mean, certainly I had that blind spot a few years ago till I recognized it. And I realized, when I started understanding gratitude, I realized for what it's worth that these are blind spots. I need to recognize what I actually have, and what I actually need to be thankful for, because we take so much for granted. We all see
Yeah.
complex
Yeah.
patients with very life-threatening, complicated conditions, and we just assume that we're going to be healthy all the time. We just assume that we have a half decent paying job. We just assume that we have to have a house. We just assume that we have to have a family. I mean, so much of
Hmm.
that is not granted, right? I mean, when we start paying a little bit of conscious attention to these things, that we really are not in control, right? I mean, you suddenly, so many consults we see that everything is going fantastic, and boom, you got an incurable cancer. Boom,
Yeah.
you've got an incurable mental disease. And if we just pay a little bit of attention to that and say, you know what, I need to be really thankful. I mean, I'm sorry for what I'm seeing, but if we just recognize that we can be thankful for so many things that are going right. I mean, such a wonderful country we live in. It's safe, it's peaceful. Look at the global economy. I mean, the cost of living is, yes, rising, but still very
Mm.
much under control compared to so many other developed countries. And there's so much land we have, and the pretty good big size houses that most Canadians have, and the fresh air and the water. Like, the list is endless, right? If you really start paying, I think they say whatever you pay attention to and whatever you focus on expands. So I think it's recognizing that there's a real science of gratitude. It's not hocus pocus. It's very well known. It actually demonstrate your inner state of alignment. That if
Mhm.
you are that abundant, joyful personality is gonna it's gonna kind of reflect outside. So if anything, it's really in our best interest to invest in gratitude. Like, I mean, as they say, life follows, right? I mean, life is
Mhm.
following who you are internally most of the time, or
Mhm.
majority of the time. So if you are misaligned and stressed out, then it's likely that we're going to attract those situations more. And we often see that the most joyful, happy people, no matter what their struggles have been, they are so grateful for. And you can see it. It's very palpable joy. I could previously, 6 years ago, I could have probably named hardly anybody like that. But now I can recognize, with practice, I can recognize, okay, yeah, that person just seems just deeply grateful for no matter what happens, everything and anything. And it also then, opens that whole idea of growth mindset we were talking about, that, how can I, help myself and help others grow, simply get better, and in the era of social media and social comparison, I think that's huge, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because, I mean, you get 150 likes for your post, but how many of those likes were genuine, right? I mean, how many people were truly happy that you published your article in Lancet, or had your book there, or got married, or had a kid, or whatever, or is it just a tick
Yeah.
box? So I think I think if we focus a little bit more on adopting that growth mindset instead of comparison, which is really scarcity mindset, right? Because let's say you had a large real estate portfolio, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, that guy, how did that guy do it? I mean, there's no way. There must be something he's not telling me. We are automatically telling our brain that it's not possible. It's not going to happen. So likely it's not going to happen for you. But that guy did it. So instead, if we say that, well, there must be something I can learn from that guy. If he did it,
Oh,
maybe I could do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
And then I think we have to practice that, right? I mean, our culture doesn't promote that. It's a more especially in medicine, you would agree that it's a bit of a lone wolf culture, right? I mean, it's a bit of a dog eat dog culture that, we don't quite have that level of growth mindset. There's people think that there's
Yeah.
only so much pie, and then you got to get the biggest slice of the pie. So
Yeah.
I am consciously training on that, how can I be genuinely happy for that person who got the bestseller book, and how can I be genuinely uh, you recognize some positive qualities of the person who did the nine-figure business or startup or whatever it is.
I love that last segment of your answer, Ketan, because I think that it's really easy to fall into the trap of, like you mentioned, on social media, you start to compare yourself to people. And but at the end of the day, we're all just people on this planet together. We're all in this together. So I think that maybe pivoting the mindset a little bit, instead of comparing, maybe celebrating the success of other people. And then if somebody else is doing really well, study them, try to emulate them,
Yeah,
see what can I learn from this individual, whether it's something as simple as this person has 200,000 Instagram followers, which I would
yeah,
love. I don't,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I, but I should study that and
Yeah.
find a way to get to that and see what I can learn from that individual. So I love your points there. In your answer, sorry, Keithan, you mentioned real estate, housing a few times, and it just dawned on me that I think you have a startup, and I think that you're also in the real estate space, in the multifamily space. Can I just pick your brain on that? Like, what exactly are you doing, and how is that going?
Yeah, so with my core group, we are trying to actively manage or actively hold real estate.
Yeah,
Because it's I've always been a number fan, and it just makes sense to me that it's not just about making money. I think it's about creating value as well. If
yeah,
you don't have to push the dollar. I mean, I think it's a privilege that we have. All of us have half decent or more incomes, and you
mhm,
can invest that in a socially responsible way. You can provide quality accommodation. You can provide quality service at an affordable price. I think it's also a social service. It's one of the most multi-generation, time-tested business. There is potential in it. There's value in it. You don't have to emulate what people do. You don't necessarily have to do the BRR and jack up the rent of the 85-year-old lady to two times the value. You don't have to play that game. You could
right,
still make very good return by following the rules. Not do the crazy, whatever they call them, the Brampton mortgages. Which are not really legal. uh,
right,
you
right,
know.
right.
So you can play a fair game. I know a lot of people. I mean, being in the Maritimes, we get connected with them, and it's unbelievable what people have done following rules. Yeah, they've created massive empires. Some people
Yeah,
individually hold several hundred units, and they have never messed around with anything. And they've created so much value. And I think it's another creative outlet. It's another pursuit of excellence. It's another meaningful pursuit while creating a good financial backbone, so that you can have those mean goal, having that financial ability to achieve your end goals. So I think it serves multiple purposes for
for
us. And
sure, for
we're
sure.
early in the game, and we're kind of learning, and we're making our mistakes. And in fact, Canadian real estate, the big American investors don't even look at it, because it's robust, but the return potential is so much lower than our American colleagues that they don't even look at us, right? I mean, what happened in Toronto for 5 years is kind of, that's shady, but it's not sustainable by any standards. But that's not what I consider real estate business. We're talking about developing strong financial portfolio, like the Canadian banks. Think about it like the Canadian banks, right? I mean,
Yeah. Now,
developing a
now, so
strong foundation.
are you exclusively in the multifamily space and Maritimes only, or do you also venture into the U.S.? Because it sounds like from your beliefs, and it's really a numbers game too, but there's probably
Yeah.
more value down there just because the prices aren't as high.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, my
debatable,
group,
but what's your take?
I think both are doable. I mean, people are
Yeah.
doing all of it. I think, in our various big groups across the country, I know dozens, if not tens of dozens of people who have done all of those. I mean, we are currently in the maritime space, not because of any restrictions, because we are getting our feet wet and, really
Yeah.
understanding what it looks like.
Yeah.
And some of my core partners and contacts are sort of more hands-on on some of the things because they have more knowledge about buildings and construction and all of that. So they, some of the, like, I know that there's a ton of deals in Saskatchewan, for example, always, there's always buildings, and
Yeah.
BC has a ton of buildings, but it doesn't pass their sniff test, right? Because they hold themselves, uh, they feel that they have a fiduciary liability. They don't want to take anybody's penny and just waste it. So they do pretty stringent, vigilance tests, and that's why it's not necessarily an impediment, but that's one of the reasons we haven't gone big and broad. It would be nice, it would be nice to
Yeah.
do that, but then that would mean, meaningful collaborations with people like you and others that, we probably should develop a better national platform, because I know for a fact that some of the syndicators and builders have those platforms, but
Mhm.
then the investors are either taking a lot of risk or they pay a lot of sort of commission or cut to get that kind of return. So, I think it would be a
Yeah.
dream to develop a national platform that allows physicians or, other professionals to invest in a transparent system, while making best possible return and balance, social responsibility. So I think that would be a dream project.
I think that's a wonderful pursuit, and it's interesting because you're out in the Maritime. So I'm curious because one of my friends, he actually introduced me to the Moncton real estate market. He sent me a few
Yeah, yeah,
listings. He said, "Yatin, look at this. Look what you can get. How much you have to pay for a duplex or triplex in Moncton
yeah,
compared to the GTA."
yeah.
It was fascinating to me, and I understand that's a market that's probably getting a lot of attention right now. But last question on real estate, Ketan, before we wrap up. It sounds like you're a numbers guy in this environment. What's your driving force then? Is it there has to be like neutral to positive cash flow, or you don't touch it, or what's your kind of guiding light for real estate right now if you're going to act, because prices are still expensive.
Absolutely. I think the Canadian market is a long-term game, and I mean, I never like to sound negative, but I think I'm gonna qualify this statement in a negative way that, I think over leverage is the surest way to bankruptcy, right? I mean, if you're over leveraging and you've not done your homework, if you've made too many assumptions, like let me give you an example. I mean, let's go to Moncton, for example. It's a very hot real estate market, right? So if you underwrote your property thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna get $2,000 for a two-bedroom apartment, and that's how I underwritten the property, and you paid that kind of money with the hope to refinance everything. I think that's a problem. I mean, that probably is going to be a problem because is there the paying capacity? Is it at that value? What's the market rent? I mean, you got to do so many checks to make sure that
Yeah.
that's actually the value. And how much risk are you willing to take? And it's always going to cost more than what you think it's going to cost. Like it's like any renovation proposal, right?
Yeah.
So I think one has to do the homework and really calculate what amount of risk you can take. How much can you really sleep on, and you don't want to over leverage. Can you swallow a 20% downturn? Like can you just be okay with it? It would be like investing in venture cap. Are you? Yes, that's a great company, but am I willing to lose the 100,000 completely? And
Right.
if you're like,
Right.
yeah, I don't quite want that. Then it's trouble. I think I really still think it's being very careful with the numbers. So
I
I
hear
think
you. I
if the interest rate goes to 7%, I think good luck to our country's economy, right? I mean, it's gonna really,
so
really hurt,
So the way I had been calculating my numbers is I started off at 5%, and then as the rate started going higher, I had to go to 6%. I mean, this is
at least.
absolutely insane because even a year ago, who would have thought that I would have to entertain interest rates this high? But I think this is just par for the course now.
No, no, you nailed it. I mean, since last year we've been, and that's brutal, right? I mean, underwriting at 5% is brutal. You
Yeah.
see how little the value becomes, and at 6% it drops another 10%.
Yeah.
And that's like it's absolutely brutal. So what are you going to do? Like, I mean, you're talking about rates that people only looked at for interest only loans or very high risk commercial loans. I mean, now that's the standard. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
even touch anything for under 5%. And that's difficult, right? I think people are going to have to underwrite at that and swallow cash neutral properties. And so that means that you really have to have a clear business plan. I mean, if you're already established, and I know some people had $25 million workboard, they don't care. I mean, they can ride the market easy, right? I mean, they don't care if it's 6%. They'll just take out the equity and buy it cash and then
Yeah.
wait on it for 5 years. But for most physicians, that's not realistic. I mean, if you're there, congratulations. I would love to chat with you. If any of our viewers are there, that would be fantastic. That's the real growth mindset, right? Let's see what
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he did and how he did it. But if you're not there, then I think you have to be careful to sort of make sure that
Uh-huh.
it shouldn't be that you're working harder to support your real estate business. It's meant to give you a little bit more financial freedom so that you can kind of
Mhm.
maybe take that Friday afternoon off with your family, or maybe do your swimming lessons or whatever it is, the horse riding that you always want to do, or do that little artwork that you want to, whatever that your hobby is, or whatever you want to spend your time on. I think it needs to be the other way around. And it comes with a lot of work, right? I mean, people really need to understand it's uh, you know if you're going to systematically scale it, that's also going to cost time, right? It's not like it's going to be just like that.
Ketan, that's my forever struggle with real estate. I feel like there are different ways to plant seeds, and this will be the last comment on real estate, but different ways to plant seeds and grow the portfolio. I feel like real estate is one of the best, but like you say, you have to take your time into account. And then I think you also have to ask yourself, well, given my financial situation, what do I need? How much return do I need to be happy? And therefore, you have to take into account how much time does one need to expend. So I think these are all important things for all of our listeners to be thinking about. Ketan, let's finish off with a little bit of
Yeah,
rapid fire, quick questions. You can feel
sure.
free to answer these questions in like a word or a sentence, whatever you want. But I ask everybody, what has been your biggest financial blunder to date? Your biggest financial mistake, biggest blunder?
Not starting early.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Trust in yourself.
What does success look like to you?
Joy and fulfillment.
And you're a collector. I can see the paintings behind you. So what's
Yes.
your what do you like to collect? Like what's your favorite thing to collect?
Oh my gosh, I like so many things. I think it's Canadian art, yeah, uh, ancient art, but also antiques, of various kinds of carvings, and historical artifacts. No, I think I'm a student of the globe. I love anything that's excellent and beautiful, and something that teaches us something about world history, and just helps us carry forward the human legacy. So it's really that anything that brings joy.
That's amazing, Kate. And I love that. To me, you come across as you've been a student for most of your life, but I think that keeps you curious, keeps you wanting to learn more. And I can tell for you that that's what brings you passion, and that's probably what's brought you fulfillment. And I'm really glad that you were able to come on here and share some of those concepts. And I want to commend you on your book, Ketan, The Legendary Quest. I think it's a phenomenal read, and I encourage everybody to just take the time to look at it. I wish that I had been introduced to some of the concepts before, and I think you've done a great job speaking at a personal level, but also introducing some evidence in the book. And Ketan, how can people reach you if they wanted to get a hold of you?
I think it's really easy. I love to connect and network. I'm sure like you do too. And feel free to email me or find me on the Savvy Physician group, or even the book has a website and email at the back cover, so you can reach out to us in any way. And happy to answer and connect for any projects, ideas, thoughts.
All right, Ketan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for making time for me, and I wish you all the best. Okay.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is entirely mine. Thanks for the opportunity.
My 5-year-old son, Zion, came home from school one day and he said, Dad, I'm learning about the growth mindset at school. The growth mindset means you want to grow your brain bigger, but the fixed mindset is when you tell yourself you can't do something. And my teachers tell me I should have a growth mindset. I was so impressed with this, so when it came time to parent-teacher interviews, I told his teachers I was so impressed he was learning about these concepts from such an early age. Nobody taught me about this, and I surely hadn't heard about the growth mindset until I was well into my 30s. The reason this incident was so memorable for me is that it was a reminder that the right habits and the right mindset can stem from saying the right things. And the earlier we do this, and the more frequently we do this, the better off we'll be. I've said it before that I think kids are the greatest blessing in life. I've talked about how they have taught me how to live in the moment. But kids also dream, they also imagine. And I think if we follow in their footsteps and live our life through their eyes, we'll be more likely to adopt a mindset of growth and abundance rather than scarcity. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay well, stay savvy.